So today we're going to evaluate dumbbell rows for our back. If you were to walk into the gym and see me doing these right now, what would you think? I'm doing a strong 1.5 second upward motion. I'm doing a controlled, constant tension, maybe 3 second downward motion. I'm extending about 95% there at the bottom. I'm definitely pulling the weight all the way up to the top as far as it can go. And in this case, I'm using my home dumbbells, which are both longer and bigger around than standard dumbbells, so that's about as far as I can get it. And I'm not swinging or rocking or cheating. What do you think? How would you grade me on this? Well, our first expert certainly likes to get a full extension at the bottom to the point of dropping his shoulder down lower than it was. The second expert, it goes almost that low. He keeps his shoulder up a little bit higher, but the arm fully extended. Our third expert, he's always quite unique in everything he does. His motion is always extraordinarily slow, and that picture is of him at his full bottom extension. His advice is to never deload the muscle. In other words, he won't extend any further if he thinks that the muscle is going to lose full tension. And then our fourth expert, she certainly extends her arm all the way down. Her shoulders may actually even be lower than her hips. While keeping our expert's advice in mind as to how far down I should be going, let's also look at the upward motion, and we'll compare that to our four experts here shortly. Now again, I think that I'm not going down quite as low as most of them, but I am certainly, I believe, coming up about as high as I can. Again, I've got my really oversized home dumbbells. What do you think? Well, our expert number one certainly is coming very high, but if he had a real sized dumbbell relative to what he might normally lift, I bet it would be landing a bit lower on his rib cage there. Expert number two, I think that's a pretty realistic weight he's using, and he's got a good height, and coming right there to his rib cage, he wouldn't be able to go much further. Expert number three, again, Mr. Unique. So what's most unique about this is, one, he almost always stops all of his motions where the joint is at a 90-degree angle. And if you look a little bit closer, you'll see that the dumbbell is actually on the outside of his hip. Everybody else has that dumbbell coming up to their rib cage and the top of their hip, and he's the only one that comes to the outside of the hip. Expert number four seems to come a little bit shallower on her upward motion, but at the same time her elbow and her upper arm are at about a 90-degree angle. Looking at my own form one last time, keeping in mind our four experts' stopping point at the bottom and top, I think the main thing I notice is I don't quite extend 100%. What do you think? Let's take a look at my form after the advice of our four experts. I've definitely slowed down my upward and downward motions, making sure I squeeze at the top and I extend to the bottom just before that lat starts to release, so I don't go completely straight-armed, but I do keep full tension on that lat. With that in mind, I think sometimes you need to intermix some of the quicker motions with a higher weight for a lower rep. You can't just do these slow ones all the time. I'm also working on getting a little bit more angle in my back, and I think what I need to do is get that support arm to lock and straighten. I find that when I have a little bit more angle in my back, it does feel like it isolates the back muscles better. I am going to borrow a little bit of stance advice from expert number two. Everybody puts one knee on the bench, but most of our experts put that second leg pretty close to the bench, a couple inches, few inches away. And I do know that when you start working that big range of motion, especially with heavier weights, you do feel it in your lower back. Using this fella's advice, you get that second leg a bit further out and a bit further back, which allows you to get a better range of motion. And when you find just that right spot, it makes you very stable and very strong, and I like it. In years past, when I used to use much heavier weights, I would have to drive that weight upward with such force that I would roll my back. In other words, kind of like an archer, you know how they kind of twist as they're pulling back? It does look like I've kind of cured that. I mean, obviously your back muscles are going to move some, but there's no excessive rolling at this point anymore. And let's take one last look at my form before we go. I think I'm looking pretty good. Again, I'm going to intermingle some of the light and slow sets with some of the heavy and quicker sets, but dagnabbit, won't you know it, that support arm does not stay straight on me. It's hard to break old habits. I need to work on getting that arm straightened out so it gives me just that little bit extra stability and back angle.